So we're hoping for better things this time. So how are we going to do these cheeks is we kind of target this corner of the mouth from this part of the eye, and it makes almost a heart shape. So I'm going to kind of come out. I'm putting a light line, and I'm using the side of my pencil. Don't hold your pencil up here to do it like you're writing a letter. I'm using the side of my pencil. I'm coming out away and then angling it back towards that corner right there. Just very, 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 very lightly. Okay, and I'm just trying to get a little bit of graphite down on my paper. Just to kind of establish where the edge of that cheek is going to be. And I'm going to come up short, about 3/4 of an inch up from the mouth. To do the other side, it's just easier for me because I'm right-handed to come off this way and turn it upside down and do the same thing. But this is the natural direction my hand wants to go and turn up my wrist. If you're left-handed, you'll do it just the opposite of what I just did. I'm just getting that on there just to show kind of where our borders are going to be for that. Just lightly putting it on right now. Now when we draw this face, and we shade it in later in class, we're going to pick a light source and a dark side. So in this case, we're going to have our shadow side be on the left right here, left right here. So this cheek will be a little bit lighter. You see there's not quite as much shading, and this will be a little darker. It'll be darker through here. So when we're doing our shading now, anticipating that, knowing that we're going to do that, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go a little bit darker on my outer edge now, and then lighter, lighter, lighter as I move across the paper this way. I'm just going to do a little bit right now. I'm not going to go too far onto it. Okay, so go about that far and stop. And there's two other things we got to do before we get too serious about finishing out these cheeks. Coming off the nose, there's that light line. We all kind of have it. It kind of comes from the corner of our mouth to the side of our nostril flare on both sides. Some people it's really prominent. Some people it's barely there. But everybody has a little bit of this going on. We need to put that on first, and it aims for the corner of the mouth, just off the corner of the mouth. Doesn't touch the corner. I'm going to put a little, kind of like a little parenthesis curved line, like she's smiling slightly. I'll do that on both sides. I don't want that to be real dominant, it's just slight. And then off of that, I'm going to angle that up to the side of the nostril flare, right up here. I'm just going to put a light line on this side, and then I'm going to do one shorter on this side. I don't want this one to be as long, okay? Just a little bit shorter, like that. It doesn't go all the way down. Okay, so we need that so we know not to take our cheek all the way down. That's to help us as a guideline. Like I say here, it's going to be shorter, so it's going to look not quite as close. Now, we're going to come along here. I'm going to go a little bit darker here. I need to keep that under my hand. No more fingerprints this time. And I'm going to work my way this way across it. I don't want that touching that line that came down here. We're going to stay away from it. But it's a dark to light, and that's what I'm going to work on, going all the way across here. And I'm going to jump around a little bit here and there on some places, but right now I'm just trying to get some value on my paper. So I'll have you get to that point of completion, then we're going to do a little work around here, around the base of the eye right here. So I need you to get at least that far. Okay, as we come around the eyelid right here, we're going to kind of come below the eyelid, and we're going to angle this out from this part of the nose, and it's going to angle at a diagonal underneath the eye. I want that to go that way, and over here I'm going to do the same thing. We'll soften this all up later with a paper towel, but for now I just want that coming around just like that on either side. Now, people that don't get enough sleep or under a lot of stress, this becomes darker and more prominent. We don't want this to be too prominent on this one. She's fine. She's not having a bad day. The one in first period had the bad day. All right. As I do this, I'm going to bring this around and lightly, lightly, lightly join it up. Get super, super, super light as I get closer to that area that I just put that diagonal line. Now later, this is going to have a lot of shading in here where the nose is and stuff. I want to highlight right here. I want to leave that light, because that kind of comes out and it's going to be highlighted, so I don't want to get that too dark. So what I'm going to do now that I have that on there, and I might have to go back in and darken a little more as I go. I'm just going to take my paper towel, I tear off a little piece. I'm not going to try this to make this too hard, this corner. Just need to fold it a couple of times. Later, when I need to get into a little tight spot, I'll fold this over several times so I have a little tight point like this one. But for this one, I'm just trying to smooth out a big area. I'm going to come out here in the lighter area and work my way towards that darker part of the cheek. Now I'm going to pull it this direction. And when I get to this edge of the cheek, I'm going to go over, actually just a little over the edge, just to soften it so it's not a hard edge on that cheek. And by going over it a little bit, it just takes that hard edge off of it. Then I'm going to come up here, right here as I came around the eye, down the side of the nose, just soften that and blend that out. It also lightens it up and looks more natural. And we had pretty good success with that one. We did not have big giant fingerprints on that one. Hopefully it looks the same on the other side when we do it. So we're going to call that one cheek a win. Because if you look at that one versus this one, man, that lady had a bad day. She got slapped up by somebody. Okay? She lost that fight. Looks like a UFC fighter. Holy cow. All right, let's work on the other side. Well, who needs a little second longer to finish this left side up? Raise your hand if you need a second longer to finish that left side up. If I don't see any hands, we're going to go ahead and work on the right side. The right side is going to be a little bit different because we're not going to come as far across. It'll still be darker on that outer edge and the bottom edge here, but I'm going to fade it out faster, and we're not going to have quite as much shading on this side. So I've got my paper turned upside down because, like I say, much easier for my hand to go this direction. I still want to leave that highlight in here. That's really important. little bit darker. I'm a little too light still. Keep your lines close together. Okay. Now I'm going to come around on this side, and I may need to darken it a little more, but I'm going to just start it with this right now because I can always go darker later. It's the trying to go lighter that's a problem. Going over the edge again, so it's a soft edge. Bringing this around and down. Oh, we are so much happier with that one. Okay, so we only have one slight fingerprint right there, and that's not too bad. Doesn't really show up. So she's a little bit prettier than Little Miss UFC over here. So far, a little better shape. And I have a feeling the rest of the drawing is going to go better. Sometimes you just got to tough it out till things get better, and that's how today is going. And if you'll notice, it kind of forms a heart shape. If you come around, if you actually brought it down to a point, you really could make that actually a heart. I don't know if I'll do that, probably not. But it is Valentine's soon, so who knows. Does anybody need more time to finish the cheeks up? Raise your hand if you do, because if I don't see a hand, then I don't know. All right, let's go on and move on to the nose. So for the nose, we're going to come along the side of the bridge of the nose and bring it down along the side of the nostril flare right here. So we're going to come right here. Just going to kind of connect the two. Just like that. We don't do that on this side. Not doing that on the right side, just the left side. Be a little dark. I'm going to fade it out as it moves towards the cheek. When we come back over it with the paper towel and soften it. That will blend right in. Okay? So now we have the shadow side of our nose. One of the biggest difference between a beginning artist, and it doesn't matter whether you're, 15 to 17 years old, or if you are 35, or if you're 65 or 85, is when they first begin, they want to draw a line all the way around the nose. And that's one way you can kind of tell a beginner from somebody that actually has learned how to draw a little bit. There is not a dark line goes all the way around anybody's nose. If you look at the person next to you, they don't have a dark line going around their nose. If they did, somebody's been messing with them with a Sharpie. Okay? It's not natural. I don't know what that was. So where we had that little ball on the nose, I'm going to have you erase that out just a little bit. It doesn't need to go completely away, but if yours is dark, make it go away. And that line going up the center of the face, kind of want that to go away too. This will vary on everybody's. Some, of course, are going to be darker. Some are going to be lighter. Just depends on how dark you did your lines to begin with. But we're going to create the nostril flare, which is the side of your nose here. When you guys don't think anybody's looking and you're picking your nose, it's the part that sticks out really bad when you shove your finger up inside of your nose. So we're going to kind of come along where that line was. We're going to go around this way. And we're going to connect it up into that line that we had come up here. Then we're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to bring it up, kind of around. Girls, this is recording. Okay, and we're going to kind of come around this way. Now we got both sides like that. Looks a little weird right now, but it won't in a minute. I'll bring that up closer so you can kind of see. Make sure that you curve away from the center. So this bows out this way, this bows out that way. Do not make it a straight line. Okay, because we're dealing with the ball of the nose on the end of the nose, so they have to curve out. And then we're going to curve along the bottom, and we'll get this nose drawn on here. Actually, the nose on that other one, on the ugly drawing, she has a really nice nose. It's fingerprints all over the cheek and forehead that makes it so bad. Okay, now I'm going to turn my paper sideways, and we are going to come along the bottom of the nose, and we're going to keep that circular shape going. We're going to make it rounded right here, because it is literally the ball. That's what's called, ball of your nose. So we're going to round that right there. So it rounds off the bottom. I'll zoom that in a little bit so it's easier for you to see. This is going to go from a one-dimensional nose to a two-dimensional nose in a big hurry. It's going to change real quick here. Before I shade in the whole bottom part of this nose, we're going to go inside the nostril holes. And this part's kind of important. We're going to go dark on this upper edge, and as it comes around, so dark right here as it comes around, and then lighter as you move down away from it. So I'm gradually going lighter, 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 lighter. Starting off dark, working my way to light. It's a nice gradual transition of dark to light. But it's quite dark. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So it's really dark to begin with, and then lighter as it moves towards the light. Up inside your nostril, it's virtually black because no light can get in there. But as you move out of your nostril and away from it, it gets lighter. That's why it needs to be gradually dark from light, and not just two little dark things that you color in super dark on both sides with no transition from dark to light. So when I hold that up a little closer, you can see that there is a slight transition from dark to light. So it goes from dark to kind of a medium dark gray. Now we have those nostrils on there. And I do those first because we're going to have to put some reflected light around the nostrils and around the nostril flare. So I want to have those in there so it's really easy to see our edges when we do the next thing that we have to do. We're staying light for right now. We're going to gradually build all this stuff up darker, but right now we just start off light because it's always easier to go darker, but it's not very easy to go from dark to make it lighter. All right, here's where we're going to focus now. Around the nose, you see around that nostril hole, there's a little bit of reflected light goes around it, a little bit goes around right there, and then there's a reflected light comes along the nostril flare and around this side of the nostril flare. It's important that we don't lose those. If we lose that, then it all flattens out. And it doesn't look two-dimensional, it looks flat, and it just becomes a big blob of medium to dark grays everywhere. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just make a very, very light guideline going around the edges, but a little light guideline coming up here. And I'm going to go around the top of my nostril hole. I'll hold this up to the camera here in just a second. It's really, really light. I just want to know where to stop when I do my shading. It's a super light line going around here. It's just a guideline is all it is. I don't want a dark line going around all that, because if it's a dark line, it will become distracting to the drawing. Come over here and do the same thing on this side. Okay, I've got that on there now. It's probably even easier to see on the right side than it is the left side. Right here where we did that ball on the nose, I'm just going to take my eraser and go right along the top edge of that nostril and just draw it in, because it kind of got filled in when we were putting that little ball on the nose on there. And if I lose it as I'm smoothing things out and different things, I can always go back and put it on later. So this is going to follow right on down. It's going to follow right on down either side of the base of the nose right here. And for the base of this nose, I got it a little long, so I'm going to shorten it up a little bit. It's too long, so I'm just going to shorten that up. And then I'm going to color in between. Right now I'm just coloring, I'm not really shading, I'm just coloring using the side of my pencil, just to establish the shadow underneath the ball of the nose. And that ball of the nose, I'm going to move a little further up, and then I'm going to go across the bottom of each nostril flare. And what this is your nose kind of has an undercut along here. And that's why this shadow comes along here. It's an undercut underneath the ball of the nose. It should cast a shadow down beneath it and onto the nostril flares. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. I'm coming up my left side, and I'm going to bring this out a little more and a little more prominent. A little bit darker right at the crease right here, and then lighter as I move towards the center of the ball of the nose. And over here, I'm going to come along the nostril flare right here, make that just a little bit darker, and then lighten it out as I move towards the edge. But I don't want to bring it over this way very far, because this is the light side of my nose. I'm coming along my nostril flare right here, darkening this up a little bit. Being careful to keep that reflected light in there. Going around the outside of the nostril flare slightly. And this side is a little bit darker. Sound like you're still a little sick there, Ben. I'm just kind of blocking it in. I'm not finishing things. I'm just kind of putting where my shadows are going to go. We're going to soften them. We'll probably have to go back over it a little bit, because when you soften stuff, things move and change a little bit. And you're always having to go back in and put highlights and things in. That's all right. Okay, now that I have that basically shaded in, does anybody need another second to get that far? I know I just kind of get focused on it, and I don't. Sometimes I get going too quick. Ben, if you need to get a drink or something, you don't need to ask. You can just go, okay? Did you hear me? Ben? He's got things in his ears. All right, side of the nostril flare. Go right to the edge of your nostril flare, and to the outside of it, cast a little bit of a shadow that's going to go onto the face itself. It'll be a little thicker down here, thinner as it moves up the side. And just let it fade out, and that will blend out even more when we come over it with the paper towel here in a minute. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. This is really important because it starts to help make the nose look like it's coming forward more. It starts to bring it forward. Then I'm going to go down here at the base of the nose. I'm going to go a little darker down here and let that fade out as I get to where the ball of the nose starts. Still working this around the nostril holes. Like I say, this is pretty fine detail work. And those of you that are here, it'll be a lot easier for you than those that chose to miss today. I know some had legitimate reasons to miss, and some of them are just screwing around. So if you're just goofing around, I guess they're just going to pay for it later. Okay, coming off this side of the nose, I'm just going to come down here and establish that line just a little bit more that comes off and heads towards that corner, but I don't want to bring it down much further than about right here. And I'm just going to darken this shadow just slightly, just so I know where the edge of my cheek is. I'm not going to go too far with that. And on this side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go a little darker up here by the nostril flare and then fade it out. But this one is going to go all the way down and connect. Be a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to bring it from here and work towards the center, but I'm going to stop about right there. I'm going to put a little line there to remind myself to stop. It's really, 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 really light through here. And it'll even get lighter when we soften it up here in just a second. Over here, I'm going to put a little bit of a line comes out going this way. And then I'm going to bring the shadow to the center of my lip. Bring it out that way, just like that. It's that little indentation right above your lip that goes up to your nose. I'm going to fade that out a little bit. Okay. Right now it looks a little strange, like she's got a big old half a mustache. We're going to soften all that up here in just a second. Just give you a minute to catch up. All right, before I soften things in, I'm going to come along the bridge of the nose, right here where this comes up, and I'm going to make this just a little bit darker right here. And it's a shadow core kind of coming up this side on the shadow side. Just a little bit darker, and then just let it fade out as it moves up. Right here, I'm going to go a little bit darker on the edge and lighter as I move towards the middle. This needs to be just a little bit darker. Just doing a little bit of refining work before I come on here and start to soften everything up with a Kleenex. Or a paper towel in this case. Up here, I'm going to just darken this shadow just a little bit more, coming around where the eye is, right to the base of the eye, and then just a little bit darker coming out where it comes underneath the eye. Just a little bit, because I know that when I come on here with this paper towel, it's going to lighten it up a whole lot. I want to make sure I don't lose this all. It looks pretty dark up there, and it is kind of dark. You're not going for black, but just darker than it is. And now is the time where we start to soften stuff up. So I'm going to fold my paper towel up, and I'm going to actually let this one get a little hard because I got to go into some small places. So now I've got that pretty hard, and I've got to go around in little tiny places like this. So I'm going to come around and I'm going to soften that nose so it looks like skin. If I lose a little bit of my highlights, my reflected light, I can go back with my eraser in a minute and put them back. I'm going to bring that right up that side, around this side, base. Now I don't want to go and use this in a light area because now it's got dark. It's got really dark. So I'll just turn around my paper so I got a clean part. I'm going to come right up here and soften all of this. I'm going on either side of my line a little bit so it's a soft line coming around here, not a hard line. I don't want a hard edge to that nose. I want it to be soft. Coming around there, a little bit darker right here. Soften that. And all this is going to get softened up right here. Again, I go just a little bit past the edge so it doesn't get a hard edge on it. Okay, now when I did that, it flattened out some of this because I lost some of my highlights, and that's okay. I'm going to come in, I'm going to put some of my darker shadows back in because it lightened them up a little bit. So right here, I'm going to darken it back up. I'll make sure my nostril holes are dark. They lightened up a little bit too. Come back in here. And I lost a lot of my highlights, my reflected light. I'm going to come back here and do that with my eraser. So right here with the edge of my eraser, I'm going to come in and just redraw that right back in there. Now I can see it easily. Do the same thing right here. It's important that that doesn't get too wide. If you do get it too wide, like wider than a hair line thin, just take and use your graphite to thin it back up. Just drop back in there. Come along here. Now I'm going to put a little shine right here on the nose, kind of on the right side a little bit because that light's coming through. And when that's finished, and I'll hold that up close, you see where I drew the reflected light back in because it kind of disappeared. I put the little shine on here. So here's the shine. Here's the reflected light drawn back in because it needed to be because it kind of disappeared when we did some of the shading. A little bit more right there. Maybe a little bit right there. And if you get too dark, that's what the eraser's for. It helps. A little highlight there, highlight here. And that's actually a pretty decent nose. It looks two-dimensional. That's kind of what we want. It's not kind of what we want, it's exactly what we want. Lighten that up a little bit. So when I back this off now, kind of have her face going. It looks a little weird because her lips aren't done yet, but we are going to do those in a second. Now that I have that, I can see that I need to go a little bit darker with my cheek right here. So I'm going to. Sometimes you have to draw another part to see what to do with another area of your drawing. In this case, I just know that I've got to go a little bit darker down here at the base. I'll work on that other side here in just a second, but I'm just going to make these just a little bit darker coming up. I'll come along and soften all that. A lot better. Come over here, and I'm going to do something similar on this side, just not quite as prominent. That side of the face has a lot more light, so I don't want to darken it in quite as dark as the left side. I'll lighten some of this up just by rubbing through here. I'll lighten a lot of that up. Got kind of a little dark spot right there. All right, that's not too bad. This is definitely going better than first hour went. I need to go a little bit darker in my eye right here on this side. And then underneath that eye, lighten just a little too much. So I'm just going to darken it slightly, so it's similar to the other side, and soften that up. Got that about where I want it now to move on to the next portion. A little bit of a highlight right here. Does anybody need a little extra time to get this far before we go on and do the mouth? Raise your hand if you do. If you don't, we'll jump into the mouth. Okay, the mouth is a little bit different. So we're going to come from where we got this little V, that little point right in the center. I'm going to actually come in close so you can see this. We're going to come in, we're going to follow that around, and we're going to bring a little curved line that goes that way, and a little curved line that goes that way. It's like a wide V shape right there. Underneath that, we're going to put a little line that kind of comes straight down a little ways, so it forms like a Y right in the middle of our lips. And then I'm going to come over here, and I'm not going to have it be the same shape as up here. This is going to start right here and come out and then go out again. These are really curved. On the bottom lip, this has a real curve to it, okay? Hopefully you can see that well up there. You don't want to draw these super dark. These aren't black. These are kind of just a medium gray. I'm only pressing medium hard. I'm not sitting there going like I'm trying to draw with a marker. These are just guidelines to create a texture. Again, I better keep things clean so I don't get all kinds of fingerprints on her chin here in a minute. All right, once you have those, bring some more out here, spacing them about the same distance apart, and a nice flow to the left, and then a nice flow to the right. There's not an exact number of these. It's It's not an exact science, we're just trying to create a texture. We're going along the top edge of that bottom lip, and we're putting a curved line going away to the left and curved lines going away to the right. Make sure they're curved and not straight. The only one that's sort of even straight is the one right in the middle. The rest need to curve away. All right, once we have those done, has everybody got the bottom lip done, or does anybody need another second for the bottom lip? Okay, we're going to do something very similar on the top lip, so we're going to kind of follow that angle that we had with that V. And these are going to be a little bit closer together. And again, we don't go all the way to the top yet. There's going to be slightly more of them on the upper lip than on the lower lip. Okay, so you can see I've about got double the number going across the upper lip as I do the lower lip. Make sure you got a nice curve, nice sweep, almost like eyelashes. Kind of lift them up at the end. We're actually making really good progress in this class. Going faster than the last class. Okay, now that we have that, we're going to come along the bottom edge of our lip, and we're just going to bring a little line that goes straight, just goes towards that one, and then when you visualize, like, where does this one and this one kind of come together if they did touch, but we don't want them to touch. Want to leave a little space, and then when you get down here to the end where it's really close, they can touch there, but we don't want them to do that where it's the widest part of the lip. And on the upper part, we're going to do kind of the same thing, just a little bit. They're going to be a lot shorter because it's a smaller lip. Basically, this is all setting up it's like an underpainting or an underdrawing for texture so that when we shade over it, we kind of see some of these contours and stuff. Now for the center, right here, we're going to come in here, we're going to put a little line here, just a little line here, and just a few little lines going this way, and then curving back that way. And I'm not going to do a whole lot down here, just a couple coming out down here, not as many as I got above. Once I have all these on here, on the upper lip, I'm going to come between those dominant lines that I had on there, and I'm going to put some lighter ones, very thin, very short, coming in between. I don't want them to be very dark. They're just very subtle. I don't even have to go all the way to the corners with them. I'm just adding a little bit more underlying texture for when I shade over this stuff. I don't really need to do that too much on the bottom lip, maybe just a little on this bottom edge here. But not too much. I don't want to go real crazy with this. A lot of this will disappear when we start shading. I'm just getting it kind of set up for that. Has everybody got those lines on there? Does anybody need another second? All right, now let's start setting it up to shade. We're going to come along the upper edge of the upper lip. Start off a little bit dark, and then get lighter as we move down. In this case, to the right, because I have it sideways. Go clear to the corner. Really fairly dark on the upper edge. In the corner here, we're going to go dark, top and bottom, and then let it fade out as it moves into the lip. So it's pretty dark right here in the corner. So that's one side. You can see that the corner is darker, kind of just all goes to dark right there in the corner. Then we're going to come over here to the other side and do the other side of this upper lip. Do it the same way. All right, almost looks like a little mustache on there right now. That's because we only have the upper part done. Okay, so it goes from dark to light. Give you just a second to get that on there, and then we will do the next couple of steps. It's important that you don't bring it too far down because we're going to need a highlight go through the center of the upper lip and center of the lower lip as it comes across. All right, now just like what we did on the upper lip, we're going to come along on the upper edge. We're going to come along the bottom edge of the upper lip, right here where the two lips come together. And we're going to go a little bit dark there and then lighten it as we move up. But we want to make sure we stop and don't bring it all the way up into our highlight. Now down here it's going to connect because it's really narrow down here, but towards the center here, and I'm staying on either side of that little V that I made in the first place. Going darker and then lighter as I move up. Where that little V is, I'm going to just follow that contour of it. So now we got the upper lip shaded, but not finished, not by a long shot, but it's just shaded in right now. Okay, for the bottom lip, I'm going to skip to the very bottom of the bottom lip right now. And I'm going to go darker along this bottom edge right here and then lighter as I move up towards the top of the bottom lip. So darker here, and gradually getting lighter as I move up. And what we're trying to do is create the illusion of a contour, like it's rounded, like a cone or a cylinder. That's why we've done all those kind of things earlier, so you understand how it fits together in real life. We have the bottom lip started. But just a little bit darker on that very bottom edge. Once I have that done, then I am going to go to the top part of the bottom lip. And I'm going to go darker up here and lighter as I move towards the bottom. Again, in the corners, it gets narrow, so they will connect. I'm not going to go quite as dark, but it is fairly dark. And then let it fade out as it moves down. Now you'll notice as you're doing this that the separation between the upper lip and the lower lip is going to get a little bit harder to see. That's okay, we're going to fix that in a minute. Okay, now a lot of people, they get to that point and they think they're finished with lips. Okay, this is where it's going to separate beginner from a little more advanced. That's what you're going to get is a lesson on how to make this a little more realistic and how to take it to the next level. And that is kind of what our purpose is here, is to teach you new things. A lot of people can get to this point and it doesn't quite look like lips, but it sort of does, and they're just like, okay, I'm good, I'll stop right there. That's not what we want to do with this. I will admit that if we all had these little blending sticks, these things here, it's a lot easier to do this next step, but how often do you actually have these on you? Like almost never, okay? If you have a drawing kit or something, you might have them. If you do, you're welcome to use them. But most of the time we don't, so that's why I show you how to use a paper towel to do this, because you can almost always find a piece of paper. You can use a paper towel. You could even use like a piece of drawing paper to do this. The main thing is that we want to fold this so many times, as many as we can, to get a hard little corner, because we're going to need a really stiff corner and a very narrow corner for what we're going to do next. So I'm just going to keep folding this over until I get it as many times as I can fold it and not lose that point. I need that point to be really sharp on the end. I've got that folded over several times. I'm going to try for maybe one more Yep. Now that's pretty hard, okay? And that's almost, not quite, but almost as hard as what the tip of this is on this thing. So pretty darn close to the same thing. Okay, so everybody get that folded up and ready like that, because we're going to need that for this next step. This is where we make it look like lips instead of just shaded over a bunch of lines. All right, I'll get in real close here. All these lines, the main lines that we created in the first place, we're going to come over and we're going to soften them. We're going to pull them up from the center here. We're using the graphite that's already on the paper through here to pull it up and soften these lines. And it gives it more of a skin texture. Then we're going to come down and connect some of these. Not all of them, but some of them. So I'm doing the right side of my lips right now and the upper part. Then I'm going to come down here and do this lower part, doing the same thing. Bringing it out from center, letting it get a little thinner as it moves towards the middle of the lip where the highlight is. Softening all of it. Do that center one. Coming up from the bottom. Okay, now the right side of my lips look considerably different than the left side. Okay, and I want that. That's how I want them to look. Then I'm going to go over here to the left side and do the same thing that I did on the right side. So I'm bringing these up, making them look a little more prominent but softer. Now it should look like kind of like a little grub for a bottom lip, but we'll change that here in just a second. Make it a little less grubby looking. What we're just trying to create is a highlight and a texture at this point. Now we're going to work on contour a little bit as we come in and soften the top, middle, and bottom edges. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put a few more of these. I just want to break it up. Right now I don't have lines in these areas, so they're not going to be as dark. They're kind of a lighter gray. And I'm bringing them in between. So there's not quite as much space in between all of these. Okay, that looks pretty good. So here's what we want to do. We want to go across this top edge now with this little pointy thing that we've got. And we're going to smoothen the very top edge of that. And then just press a little bit lighter as you move down. Don't go too far down because we don't want to lose that little highlight too much. We'll do that over here. Just going to smoothen it out so it doesn't look rough. Bring it down just a little bit. We're going to come to the bottom of the upper lip and do the same thing from the center and move up slightly. Now if you lose a little bit of your highlight, it's okay if you lose a little bit of your highlight because we can come back in with an eraser and draw some of that back in. I'm going to come down to the bottom lip, soften that up, and we're going horizontally now on this. Just to get rid of that rough look, smooth everything out. done it right, it'll start to look even more and more and more like lips. I'm going to bring some of this back and forth across so it's not just a big white line going across there. Okay, everything's softened out quite a bit now on this compared to what it was. Right along this bottom edge here. Now what I want to do is I'm going to draw with my eraser. Okay, instead of drawing with the pencil or shading, I'm going to draw with the eraser, and I'm going to put in some highlights here. I'm just going to come right in here with the corner of my eraser and brighten some of these little highlights, not all of them. Some of them to make this look like it stands out a little more in the middle. I'll come right here in the center, bottom. Do the same thing. I'm lifting my eraser up so I get a little point when I'm erasing. The brightest part will be right in the middle right here. And then as it works its way left and right, they become smaller and less prominent. We don't even want them to be that noticeable. Okay, so now it's quite bright. And right on the upper edge of the bottom lip, I'm going to put just a little highlight right here and a little highlight right there. It helps separate the top and bottom lip slightly. I'll hold that up close so you can see what I'm talking about. Just a very, very small, super subtle line. And for a finishing touch, I'm going to come along the bottom edge of my upper lip with a very, very dark line. Right here, it's going to be a little thicker right there. Go down underneath that point. A little thicker right there. And I'm going to bring it all the way back to the corner. If I do that right, now you can see clearly the upper lip from the lower lip because we've darkened that in. And it separates the top from the bottom lip. I'm making that a little bit darker. And I do have to say, so far, this face looks 10 times better than last period. So we're happy with that. We're going to put a chin on this, and we're going to have this finished here in just a second. When we do the chin, it's very small. We're just going to put a little bit where it kind of the lower lip casts a shadow onto the face. We're going to do that right now. We're going to come right along here, finish this out. Let me raise this up a little bit. Finish this out. We're going to go very lightly right below the lip. Come around almost to the end of the bottom lip. Right now we're following the contour of the bottom lip, but we're going to change directions as we move down here in just a second. So we're coming along here, going along the contour, following it, and then when we get about here, we're going to change and go this way. This is about where that chin's going to come in. So we're going to go the other direction and then bring them together. I'm going to continue to bring this up along the bottom edge of the lip. It's going to be a little bit longer up there. A little longer here. It kind of fades out as it gets towards the end of the bottom lip. Go a little bit darker right here, right under the lip, because it does cast a shadow onto the chin. So that needs to be slightly darker. Fade it out into that stuff I've got down below it. And I'll just take a paper towel or Kleenex and come along here and soften this to look like skin again. Just let it fade out at the edges. Make sure I got it curved. And she's finished, as far as that goes. And I will say that there is a prominent difference in the way these two finished out. This looks like she just came from a battered woman's shelter. This one, not so bad, okay? That's what we want. On Thursday, when we come back to class on Thursday, what you're going to do is you'll get that eye template and you will draw a face start to finish, okay? That is going to be graded.